I do not. I think Plan Commission shifted their meeting till 4:30. So I suspect she is unavailable.
Thank you. I did not hear that from her. I heard that she wanted to speak at the outset, but I will keep looking. Just again, if you notice, please let me know. There she is. It's like she heard me.
You know,
Rich, are you here? Okay, I thought so. I just couldn't see all of you. All right, are we good to go, Miss Bailey? All right. Okay, it is 5:01 p.m. On July 13th, 2020, and I want to call this meeting of the Landmarks Commission of the City of Madison to order. The first matter of business, I'm going to kick it to Stefan, who is facilitating tonight's meeting to cover some ground rules.
Right. Okay, welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on while you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and tech facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. If your name in Zoom does not currently match what you entered in registration, please exit the meeting and enter using the correct name. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bailey, can we go ahead and do a roll call quickly? You're muted.
awesome. Okay, Anna Andrzeje,
Here.
Katie Kaliszewski,
Here.
Dave McLean,
Note for the record, he said here.
Maurice Taylor,
Also indicated he is here.
Rich Arneson,
Here.
and Commissioners Arvina Martin and Betty Banks are excused from the meeting.
Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to remind the commission of a few items and a few changes. These meetings do take longer, and we do have only one meeting a month now that we're in virtual mode. So if something has been stated repeatedly, it's fine to state your agreement with the position, but no need to repeat the points if another commissioner has made those points. Please also respect the rule. If a registrant gives their statement, if you have a question, try to ask it at that moment. We often run our face-to-face meetings more loosely, but again, it's easier just for efficiency's sake if you can ask your questions of the registrant at the time. Also, tonight, you have control over your mute-unmute button. I will not be muting and unmuting you. I will be calling on you, but you are in charge. We'll get help from our tech facilitator, Stefan, tonight, but that does mark a change. Also, I wanted to say a few words at the outset for members of the public tonight and those that that have registered to speak. We ask that you keep in mind the jurisdiction of the Landmarks Commission. We will talk about that certainly during the staff report. I'd also ask that you be mindful of the 3-minute limit. We may have questions for you after you make your statement, but again, your initial statement should be within the 3-minute time frame. With that, I want to move on to approval of the minutes from our June 1st, 2020 meeting. Again, commissioners, assuming you've read those minutes and wish to make a motion, please unmute your microphone, and I will accept a motion on that.
Motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Alder McLean motions. It's seconded by, Commissioner Kalashewski. Are there any objections? Seeing none, I will take that as unanimous consent. And moving on. The next item is Legistar 60576, the Landmarks Commission public comment period. Are there any registrants here that wish to speak to an issue not on tonight's agenda?
I
Ms.
will
Bailey.
refresh the registration system. We do not currently have any registrants for agenda item number 1.
Great, thank you very much. Disclosures and recusals. Are there any members of the Landmarks Commission that should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code this evening? All right, seeing none. We're going to move into our public hearing. Should we, Ms. Bailey, are we moving to the public hearing or are we doing the consent agenda first?
Both.
Okay. Do you want to begin with the consent agenda?
I think that would be advisable.
Okay. All right. As I shuffle my papers in our brave new world here. Okay, it is the practice of the Landmarks Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it, on which the applicant accepts those conditions, and that there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to an item. Those items are placed on the consent agenda, and we address those at the beginning of the public hearing section of the meeting. Then people who are interested in those items do not have to continue on the meeting call. Also, commissioners will have an opportunity to request separation if there is an item that they would like to have considered separately and not included on the consent agenda. Of the items before us today, there are 2 that are recommended for approval with the recommended conditions of approval as outlined in the staff report. Ms. Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, those are item number 6, Legistar 61087, and item number 7, Legistar 61088. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So at this point, I believe, are there any requests from the Landmarks Commission to separate these items? What that means is if you have questions relating to these items, we will pull them from the consent agenda and discuss them separately later on in the meeting. And I am not seeing raised hands. Is that correct? Okay. Ms. Bailey, do we need to read into the record the names of the registrants for these items as well?
The registrants are the representatives of the project. So there's, for agenda item number 6, there's Janet Van Vleck in support and Elizabeth Quick registering in support. For agenda item number 7, there is Brian Reed also registering in support.
Okay. So looking at that, I will look for a motion from members of the Landmarks Commission to approve both of these 2 items on the consent agenda, meaning we will not discuss them later on in the meeting. This is the first time we've utilized this system, so I want to make sure everyone is following. The next step would be to accept a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve both items of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner McLean.
Welcome.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Arneson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will assume unanimous consent unless I see or hear someone raising an objection. Seeing none, items number 6 and 7 are approved as part of the consent agenda for tonight's meeting. Great. All right, we're moving on. We're moving back, in fact, to item number 2. This is Legistar 59708, a project at 821 Williamson Street. It involves demolition of an existing commercial structure, construction of a new 3-story mixed-use structure, and land combination in the 3rd Lake Ridge Historic District in the 6th Aldermanic District. This is a public hearing item, so I'll open the public hearing before I forget, and then I will kick it to Ms. Bailey for the staff report.
All right, so what I have up on the screen is the current building located on this parcel. For history of the project, at the Landmarks Commission's last meeting, June 1st, the Landmarks Commission approved certificates of appropriateness for the demolition of the existing building at 817 and the combination of the underlying lots to create a single parcel. The Commission referred the certificate of appropriateness for new construction to a future meeting, and the applicant resubmitted for this meeting. So for applicable standards, we're looking at 48, oh, I forgot to update the slide again. It should be 41.23, 6, Third Lake Ridge standards for new structures. And we're looking at gross volume, height, proportion of rhythm of solids and voids to the street facades, materials used in street facades, design of the roof, and rhythm of buildings, masses, and spaces. We're looking at historic resources within 200 feet of the subject property. And the test that we're using here is it visually compatible? Not identical, but is it visually compatible? So here we have some buildings in the vicinity of the subject property that are identified as historic resources, meaning they are within the period of significance for the historic district. On the right-hand side of the slide, you have the visual compatibility map that identifies all of the potential historic resources within 200 feet of the property. Here are the updated renderings of the proposal. The applicant made changes to the cornice of the central projecting bay, so that is now located below the mass of the building that is behind that. The applicant also slightly reduced the height of both of those portions. And the color of the brick has been changed from the dark red in the previous submittal to a blonde brick. And here we have some comparisons from the previous proposal to the current proposal. And another view. This is also a view, although albeit pixelated, of looking down Willie from this particular block to give you a view of both that particular block face, but the overall street segment. I've also included, because as part of the discussion last time, there was talking about the size of lots historically and the historic pattern of development. So what we have up here are the lot configurations as of 1908, the lot configurations and the buildings thereon per 1950. And then, this is a little fuzzy because I'm the one who pulled it, from our GIS, there's the current lot configurations and the structures that are located on them. So you can see that things have been evolving over time. Staff believes that the standards for granting a certificate of appropriateness for the new construction are met and recommends the Landmarks Commission approve the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bailey. I know we have many registrants on this item. I would like to take a second to invite Alder Rummel, knowing she has competing meetings this evening, to see if she would like to speak to us at the outset. And if that's changed, Alder Rummel, we can also have you go last as per the custom. So it's up. The floor is yours if you want it.
Thank you. I can't probably stay to last, so I'll stay for a while till about 5:35, because Plan Commission usually just doesn't really have public hearings till 5:45. So as long as I get there by then. Thank you, everyone, for taking a look at this project. It's clearly a project where no one cares about the existing building, the MTI buildings, does not contribute to the life of the historic district. But it's tricky because it's on these two lots of which we have now combined. And so if I'm a developer, of course, I'm going to try to utilize all the space I can. And I think that's where the problem comes, because when you do that, I don't think you meet the standards for gross volume and for the rhythm and voids ones. And also with the change in brick color, I'm not strongly against it, but I do think the material question comes back on the table with that change. So, I mean, I think there could be a project here. I personally don't think we're quite there yet. I think it's too big for the two lots. I mean, it's on two lots and it should somehow be able to fit that is on two lots, but not be filling most of that space. And, you know, I'm not the designer. I don't have an answer for that. But I think that we should ask the developer to keep working on it. And they, you know, I know that they want to do good work in the neighborhood and elsewhere, and they're kind of adept at smaller projects. So I think they're maybe capable of coming back with some other version that might fit what I think would be a more appropriate scale. Considering, I think the key point for me is the south side of the street is a lot different than the north side of the street. So somebody surely will say, well, across the street, everything's, you know, big. Well, yeah, that's the industrial side that was facing the rail corridor. And this side is the residential side. And I mean, you can show me all the changes in map, but basically the pattern is that it's smaller lots. And so I think that's the hard part about having a development here. And I stop now and answer questions or listen to the other public comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Rummel. Are there any questions for the Alder at this juncture from members of the commission? Okay, I see no raised hands at this juncture, but I appreciate you staying on as long as you can as well. Thank you. All right, Ms. Bailey, shall we take up the list of registrants?
So first registration is Kevin Burow representing the project.
Yep. Kevin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Do you want me to share my screen with regards to the presentation or just go back to Heather's slides?
Oh, I didn't have a separate presentation from you.
Okay, then you want to just call up the comparisons, please?
I can.
This one would be sufficient. So basically, as we presented about 6 weeks ago, the main issue that was brought to the table was with regards to the mass and the scale of the building, and does it fit within the context of this neighborhood? We were asked to try and reduce the overall height of the building, and then do whatever we can architecturally to reduce the overall appearance of this mass. What you see before you on the lower left-hand corner is the previous design, where we had a rich red brick color with a taller cornice at the main facade, which was up against the sidewalk element. And our proposed redesign has lowered the overall mass of that element by 4 feet and removed the cornice element as well and pushed it back to the main building behind, which is set back from the sidewalk an additional 9 feet. And then we're able to reduce the overall volume, in our opinion, with regards to changing the color of the materials from the red brick color, which tends to have a more heavier feel to it, to the cream city brick color as shown above. There are other buildings within this area that have the lighter color brick, predominantly the sides of the buildings that have not been painted over or buried are traditionally the cream colored brick, and then some other main facades as well. So our goal here was basically just to reduce the overall scale and feel of this mass of the building. As you can see in the upper floor, we eliminated the transom windows above the upper windows to again be able to reduce the height. And we were also able to skinny up the overall structure such that the entire mass of the building from front to back a lot has also been reduced. We were asked to try and push this building back further from the sidewalk, if at all possible. And we did study that. And right now we are butting up against the rear yard setback. So we cannot move the building back any further. We currently have a 2-foot setback along the front of the lot, which is more than what is required because this would be allowed a 0-foot setback. But so in order to reduce or push the building back any further, we would be forced to reduce the number of units within the building. And as this project has been vetted out in many different ways by the developer, the density that we're proposing in this proposal of 24 units is really what we need in order to make this project feasible. So at this point, we're not able to push the building back from the sidewalk any further, which is why we did the reductions that we did or the changes that we made to try and reduce the overall appearance and scale of the building. If you could go to the next 2 slides, just to show additional views. So again, you can see the comparison. The rear materials have not changed at all. They're already a beige color and tan colored trim. So the cream city brick blends in well with that as well. The next slide, please.
Maybe. There we go.
So here's some additional views that we did not have the last time, sort of setting the character, the scale of this neighborhood as best as we can through a 3-dimensional rendering, where you can see this block is anchored on the end at 803 with a 3-story building. And then just off the screen immediately in the upper left-hand corner is the adjacent commercial building, which has a flat facade as well. So we feel, based on these changes, that we hopefully have come within the context of being visually compatible for this section of Willie Street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burow. Are there any questions of Mr. Burow from members of the body? Keeping in mind, I don't see any. Try to use the raised hand function if you can. All right, Commissioner McLean.
Dave, you need to unmute yourself.
Am I good? I'm good. All right, thank you. Have you by chance looked at, and I hate to throw the big one at you, but looked at splitting the building in essentially 2 towers with the parking entrance down the middle, breaking up the massing along the street and putting the void obviously in between the buildings as opposed to off to the side and squishing what could be 2 separate buildings together?
We did look at that early on with regards to the parking lot layout in the basement. That would not function because then we would not be able to access with a central drive aisle because it would have to be split in half on each side. So unfortunately, we have to have the width of the building as it currently sits close along the side of the driveway such that we could get double loaded parking within the basement.
Yeah. Thank you. That's kind of it for the moment.
Okay, other questions from commissioners? Again, use the raised hand function. Okay, Mr. Burow, I'd ask you to remain on in case questions come up, as they inevitably will as we go through this.
Okay,
all right.
Thank you.
Ms. Bailey?
Linda Leonards, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Linda, you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. It was telling me I was muted as unmuted, so I didn't know quite where I was. Thank you. I did send in a letter last week, and so I'm basically going to be talking from that letter, but I would like to make several comments about what the representative just said. While he was talking, I understood him to be saying that the building depth has shrunk, but when I do a comparison of the plans that were submitted to the last time to this time, it still is the same depth for the project. The front roof line isn't 4 feet shorter, it's a foot shorter, and in addition to moving the cornice back. So that was never really counted as part of the mass to begin with. I think it's important when looking at this that what visually compatible is has some sort of internal standards based on what's been approved before. In looking at 739, that was only approximately a 40-foot wide project, but yet the landmarks commissioners at that time thought it was too wide on the south side of the street, Staff at that time thought that the building, quote, would be better suited to the north side of the street, given the different characters of the different sides of the street. So that one eventually got approved because there was a living wall that a green hydrangea is going to be growing there, and that would split the building into two 20-foot structures visually, and therefore it would fit. In contrast, this doesn't have anything. It has a 40-foot mass in the center and then the two wings, which also count as part of the mass at the sidewalk, so we're up to 60 feet. 739 also had those wings at the side, and they were considered part of the main building at that point in time. We're looking at a building that is much higher than 803 Williamson, which was, at that time, the developer, the same developer for this project, said that 803 Williamson was 3 feet taller than its immediate neighbor. That was the information that the Landmarks Commission used to determine. And that also then was what the condition that was put into effect for that particular building. And I think part of the difference too in mass is 739, its neighbors sit close to the sidewalk. Here at 817, the neighbors sit about 24 feet back from the sidewalk for the main portion of the house. Visual compatibility should be looking at the historic resources, not looking at things that were built outside of the period. And one of the things that can be used as a guide, as according to the city attorney, is the development criteria in the historic district plan, which gives a sense of what was meant by visually compatible, and for both mass and for height. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sticking to time, Ms. Leonards. Are there questions from members of the commission, either about Ms. Leonard's testimony here or her memo that she sent? Okay, seeing no hands raised. Thank you, Ms. Leonards.
Next is Steve Ohlson, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Good afternoon. I'm one of the members of the Marquette neighborhood who sent in a letter to the committee. I live at around the corner from the project on South Patterson Street. The problem is not whether or not this building is attractive. The problem is where this building is located. Since the very first appearance of Mr. Cook before an M&A committee in July of 2019, the most serious remarks in opposition to this building have been over how close it is to the sidewalk, the total width, the height, and the lack of any step backs at the front. The latest so-called changes are laughably insignificant. The most significant sentence in the latest letter of intent from the architectural firm is this: given the configuration of the apartment units and the required density in order to make this project feasible, we are not able to remove any interior space out of the building. The insignificant tweaks that have been made to the original design offer absolutely no resolution to the concerns about the project that have been raised by a significant number of neighborhood residents who have commented to this committee in writing. It would seem from the changes that have been made that the developer thought we were saying things like, well, I like my buildings to be a little more brown, or I like my buildings to be a little more reddish. This is not an ugly building. It just does not deserve to be here at its present size. And we urge the committee to reject this proposal. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions of this registrant from any members of the Landmarks Commission? Okay, I see no raised hands. Thank you, Mr. Ohlson.
Next is
Yeah.
Gary Tipler, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Go ahead, Gary.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to comment as well on the massing. I feel that the scale is inappropriate according to the historic district guidelines, and that the idea of a double volume or double part building that would start perhaps at the street and have an interior court should be investigated a little bit further. I think that would be more appropriate, and the drive could certainly be flexible as to where it's located and accomplish very much the same thing. You may lose some space, but I want to also point out that part of the reason that this building is being proposed as being up to the street is that because it's a mixed-use building. If I'm not mistaken, the zoning would permit an apartment building without mixed uses, but the setback would be greater. So to take a greater advantage of the site, the mixed use is proposed, and there'll be a small commercial space. Unfortunately, I question the validity of commercial spaces in all of our districts these days, and hope for the best, but I am not very optimistic, I'm afraid. I feel that the mass of the building suggests that to the untrained eye or to people who are not paying attention to this is going to lead to more speculation in that people will be buying up properties with the idea of exceeding the zoning capacities and zoning limits and historic district guidelines, which places a burden on everybody who's invested their lives and fortunes within these buildings nearby. And I'm afraid that I've seen it happen in a couple of waves in the last 20 some years, and I'm concerned that would happen again. So I think it's best to try to meet the standards as best as possible, and to go for a smaller building, or at least the appearance of a smaller building. The one that's proposed historically would have been adjacent to the rails across the street, which is why there's the two aspects of the two sets of limitations according to the comprehensive plan that was revised a couple of years ago. So there are different standards for the north side of the street than the southeast side of the street. So that, I think, has to be taken into regard as well. And as much as I like this kind of a building in general, the warehouse type look, it just is historically inappropriate for that side of the street. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks again for sticking to time. Are there questions from the commissioners for Mr. Tipler? Okay, seeing no raised hands. Thank you, Gary. All right, Ms. Bailey.
Okay, so there is Brandon Cook, registered in support, not wishing to speak, but available for questions. Also, Michael Engel, registered in opposition. All the remaining are not wishing to speak. Registered in opposition from Madison. Leslie Schroeder, registered in opposition from Madison. Jacob Harris, registered in support from Madison. Ann Walker, opposed, Madison. Tracy Dietzel, opposed, Madison. Pilar Gomez-Ibanez, opposed, Madison. Marilyn, I'm sorry if I'm making your name, Berg, opposed, Madison. Peter Wolf, opposed, Madison.
Okay, great. Before I close the public hearing, I'd like to ask the commissioners one more time if they have any questions of any of the registrants before we go into deliberation. Okay, with that nice Zoom delay, seeing none, I think I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing again. and we will move into discussion. Alder Remmel, if we lose you, thank you very much for joining us. I know it's 5:35. Before we get going, I would like to actually ask a clarification question from Ms. Bailey in hopes of setting up this discussion. At our previous meeting on June 1st, Ms. Bailey, the Landmarks Commission approved the applicant's request for demolition of the existing building and the combination of the lots, correct?
Correct.
So, all right. So what we are looking at tonight is more specifically approval of the new construction.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure everyone knew we were on the same page with that. So that is the charge before us. I would also like to direct, and this may be helpful for those of you listening in tonight as well or watching us, that we are working with the standards. We heard that term in some of the testimony tonight that are listed in the staff report. There are several, and I will not repeat them, but more specifically, we are looking at an ordinance section about granting a certificate of appropriateness, a state statute, I won't list it out here, as well as the specific standards for the 3rd Lake Ridge Historic District. And I mention that because that is the Landmarks charge. There are other plans, et cetera, that were referenced in some of the commentary. And I just want the commission to be mindful of what's in the staff report as our specific charge. Ms. Bailey, do you have anything else to say relative to that?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right. So with that, I will open the floor for commissioners to discuss this item. We've had lots of testimony. This is our second meeting talking about this. And so I will open the floor. And this is the awkward Zoom moment. So I'll give everyone a chance to collect their thoughts, but please use the raise hand function. Great. Commissioner Taylor, please unmute yourself and you're free to go.
I just had one question for Ms. Bailey. I just want to make sure that's clear. Staff is recommending the certificate of appropriateness for this project. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The standard, could you put the standards up on the screen? I'm looking through here. I'm not seeing it. Is that possible? Because I'm looking here at the map of the area, and I'm wondering if staff is looking at the fact that the buildings immediately across the street, the 2 buildings across the street look similar to what's being proposed.
So the buildings directly across the street are not historic. They are infill construction from maybe about a little over 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, no, right around 10 to 15. So yes, this does look a lot like the buildings directly across the street. But those are not the historic resources that this building has to be compatible with. So with the standards that we have, we're looking at visually compatible with the historic resources within 200 feet. I do think it is helpful to look at the more recent infill construction because those provide examples of projects that the Landmarks Commission approved, and they provide examples, case studies for how those buildings went about attempting to meet these very same standards. So this building isn't supposed to be compatible with the non-historic resources, but it is attempting to find a path towards meeting that compatibility standard. And there are other buildings in the vicinity that went about it in different ways.
So Heather, staff is basing their decision just based on height and what the developer is trying to communicate with their plans and stuff. I'm just trying to figure out where is staff coming up with their decision to.
Sure. So I went into much more detail with the previous staff report from June 1st. But what I am looking at is, this building is larger. That is, it is larger than the historic resources in the vicinity. And by vicinity, I mean 200 feet. But the standard that I went back to and looking at was it doesn't have to be identical to the historic resources. It has to be visually compatible.
Sure.
The standards that you have there for this particular use is looking at gross volume and height. Those were the big sticking points last time. But it's also, we have the emphasis again on street facades. Third Lake Ridge is very much focused on the experience of a building from the street facade. I think that this, while it is a larger building, is designed in a way where the street presence with that center projecting bay that is now reduced in height, and there's the emphasis with the cornice on the main mass of the building behind it, presents a more reduced street presence than the previous proposal. With the setbacks on either side of it, that's also reducing the amount of street presence of the building. With the rest of it, they've got insets with balconies further back, and the rest of the mass of the building tucked into the hillside and oriented in a way where from the street it's going to provide a relief and read a little bit more like two separate buildings going on there. And there are some historic resources in the vicinity that have a similar configuration, either where they've got, well, there's a building a couple doors down where the historic building is there in the center of the lot, and then connected as a sort of T is a non-historic wing on the back of it. You also have other buildings in the vicinity where there's the principal building, and then there's garages or other structures on the back of the lot. So this is going to be one building, but I think it has references to the rhythm of masses and spaces that you find elsewhere, both on that block face and within 200 feet.
Sure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, other questions for Ms. Bailey or comments from members of the commission? Ms. Bailey, I would keep up this slide. I think it's quite helpful as commissioners are speaking to the project and some of the changes that have been made. Please use the raise hand function as well. Okay, Commissioner McLean, please.
It's going. I think again, just basically, I think it's too large. Its gross volume is too large. The way it reads on the street relative to the adjacent properties. Even kind of looking in the map provided in the presentation here, it does have the setback on the side quite a ways back. But the main building is still larger than the two buildings across the street, which are some of the two larger buildings. They did break up those masses, it looks like. I don't know if they were the same project or not, but there's a break in between them, which I think helps a little bit. They do look a little bit large as well, but they're on that side of the street as we spoke of earlier regarding the north versus the south, south side of the streets and the elevations that go with them. I still would like to see something with a broken up mass, not necessarily vertically as much horizontally, having a mass and a void and a mass on this site. I think in the area that it is, the adjacent properties, including the ones across the street, I think are still going to actually read smaller than this building yet, the way it's currently massed. And I appreciate the work they've done. They've tried to bring it down, but I think they're stuck with what they have where they are with this design. I need to look at something else. And that means losing one of the units, basically, and having the entrance for the garage not centered, but within one of the living bays, one of the towers that they're creating. Then say, keep it right where it is right now, and split the tower into two towers and push the one over the garage entrance, and you'll lose some first floor space, but you could reconfigure the lobby and the commercial space to address that. Maybe that lobby entry is pushed back in between the buildings a little bit now, and you have to go in the void between the two towers to get to the lobby. I still think it'd be a better solution for the elevation and for the neighborhood than with what we have here.
So if I may, you're speaking really to F more than anything else here, is the rhythm of building masses and spaces.
The gross volume, I would say, as it reads right now, it reads as one very large gross volume.
Okay.
If they break it up, the volume will remain the same. They won't lose any volume. but it'll read as two different volumes, a little bit stronger than one almost trying to be smaller, large volume, if that makes any sense.
And
So
it's specifically that you're specifically looking at that large 41-foot center section.
Right now, yes, as not meeting gross volume, I would say. I think they could address that, as I mentioned. And sorry, I just lost your other talking points here. Thank you.
There you go.
The height, I would say even the height as well. And that might, if you could thin each one up a little bit, maybe I'm, talking dreaming here, but I think it would help. The height wouldn't seem so tall if it's not so wide, if that makes any sense. Again, being your perspective and the proportions of the buildings next to it. So I would argue for height as well. Some of those perspectives you see in the renderings really dwarfs the houses, and that's the elevation that this building is on. I understand that, across the street again, there's more height in some of those buildings, but this isn't on that elevation. So I think the height's going to be a factor. Even just looking at it from the street view, you look at the existing building right now as perceptually a one-story building, but even next to the houses that it sits as a one-story building, and that's old construction. So I imagine the floor to ceiling height's lower than what we're going to have here. Triple that thing up, that close to the street, with the houses pushed back on both sides of it, it's going to look really tall. This one. So I would say we're in the height category too. Design of the roof, it's fine. No, the materials good. I mean, the colors can be discussed, of course, but the materials overall are good for D. But F, again, rhythm of buildings, masses and spaces, I don't think it meets that either.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe Commissioner Kalashevsky was next.
So, yes, I just want to say that I agree with everything that David just said. I am mostly concerned about gross volume and height. I actually just drove down that street a couple of days ago thinking about this project. And I think and I know we are not supposed to be comparing what's across the street from it, but one of the things that the building across the street has going for it also is that it has at least a little bit of a setback, so it's less kind of pushed up to the front of the street, so it allows it to have a little more height without feeling that height. So I echo what David was talking about, and also what a number of the community said, that the volume and the height is the thing that I don't find necessarily visually compatible currently. Like David, have no suggestions as to how to fix that. I understand that there is that we're moving a bunch of pieces around, trying to get this to fit in an area that it wants to be the best place for it. It might not be. And that is something we as landmarks have to kind of determine. So.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Lowered your hand. All right. Mr. Arneson, you're unmuted, I think. Maybe not. There you go.
No. Thank you. I mean, I think we have a situation where I agree with what Katie just said about the suggestions that we're making, but I think we're at a point where the suspected developer is at the limit of what they can do and still have a feasible project. I think the changes are nice. I like the lighter brick. I think it's effective. The roof changes as well, and we have a staff report that says the standards are met. So I'm in favor of the project and would vote accordingly. I don't think that the changes that have been discussed would make sense on this site. So I think I would suspect that they're kind of at the point of, this is the best we can do. So I would be in favor of it.
Okay, I am, all right, I'm unmuted. So I think we are at a point. I'm looking at the standard. I appreciate Ms. Bailey having these up. I think we're at a point where we probably need to move forward. I'm looking, let's see. I mean, I think Mr. Arneson raises an interesting point, and on this commission, we are not all of us are architects anyway. So we cannot necessarily do the designing aspect of things. For my part, I will say that I appreciate the changes, certainly, that they did make in terms of lowering the first and second floor units a bit. I certainly appreciated that, as well as the cornice changes. For me, I think part of the sticking point is more F, which has to do with sort of the rhythm and how that fits in with the street. So any further comments? And one of the limitations of this Zoom format is that we cannot respond to one another as we usually do in real time. So, you know, if a commissioner would have been talking, someone else would jump in to say things. If you guys unmute yourselves, we can try to have a real discussion here. It's sort of up to you as to how you want to proceed. If not, we will entertain a motion, although that seems a little premature. Okay, Commissioner McLean.
I'm muting and raising my hand.
Awesome.
Would it be reasonable to ask the applicant if they would consider looking at a different layout? As I was kind of discussing a little bit, maybe they already have, and if they have, then that's fine. I know they looked at a center parking one, but not a side parking with a center courtyard. And that's entirely up to them, of course, but I'd like to throw that out there before we make a motion as well.
Is it possible to get the applicant on?
Just confirming that's Kevin Burow.
Yes, it is. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, he's still present.
Okay, Mr. Burow, there's been a question raised. If you can hear us and respond.
Yes, I heard the question, so thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak again. We have looked at various massings of this building, and really, as Commissioner Arneson kind of hit the nail on the head, what it boils down to is the number of units that make this project feasible. We could certainly create a courtyard element in the middle of the building and reduce it into smaller masses, but we would be removing at a minimum of 3 to 6 units to accomplish that in order to truly break up the mass of the building and create the spaces that are being requested here. So I'm not the owner of the project, so I can't speak specifically with regards to whether or not that would be even entertained at this point, or if that would ultimately kill the deal by having fewer units. But it is something we have studied in the past, and it really does boil down to what is a feasible project for this site based on the amount of land that is available.
Mr. McLean.
I think my hand is still raised. Thank you for responding. It sounds like they've looked at what they looked at, so thanks.
Okay, Mr. Arneson.
Yeah, I had raised my hand before. I mean, I'll make a motion to approve for the application in the staff report.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Do I hear a second? Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I'll second that motion. I agree with staff.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this item? I'm going to turn my video on. I've been having some issues with people coming in and out. Sorry, I'm trying to lower hands here. Anyone want to speak to the motion or respond? Oh, I love the Zoom pause. Ms. Bailey, could you maybe take the standards down, I think, for now, please, so we can see one another? Thank you. If not, I can call the vote. I will probably speak before this happens. Anyone?
I mean, guess I've, like I said what I've said. Rich feels it's good as it is. That's his opinion. So, got nothing else to add, I guess.
Okay.
Just making some noise.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Breaking the awkward Zoom ties. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to, since I will be voting on this item as well, I feel the need to speak to this item. I think we're really close. I just don't think we're quite there yet. I really appreciate the changes that the applicant made. And what's bothering me is that 41-foot behemoth at the center that I just don't know quite what to do with. I think that the changes are really close, but like the alder, I just do not feel that we're quite there. And I hate to delay projects that I think are close, because I think a project can work here. And I would really like to see a project work here. I'm just that we're on that visually compatible point. I mean, I think that that's really it. And as I spoke to earlier, for me, the issue is F. And I would like to, and I realize we're in the COVID timeline and things are delayed, but I would really like to ask one more time for a little bit more work. And I would appreciate it if somebody else would respond at this point, because I feel like I'm the only one speaking here, but perhaps we've said everything that needs to be said. Ms. Kalashevsky.
I agree. Thank you for bringing up Alder Rummel's comments, because I also agree with her in that there is a potential for a project here. I just don't think we're close enough for what I would ultimately feel comfortable voting for.
Thank you. Mr. Arneson.
Well, I'm fine with having them take another stab at it. I think that we should all be prepared that I doubt that there's going to be that they can do wholesale changes that are going to address the things that you guys have brought up. And that the extent that they can make changes, they're going to be relatively minor changes, although lowering the height a little bit is not a minor change. That probably took quite a bit of work. But, I think they're going to be tweaks, not major design changes or revisions or so. We might find we would wait 4 weeks or whatever, whenever our next meeting is. We might find ourselves in this exact same position, a couple minor tweaks that are good, but most people many of the people that spoke tonight are probably going to have the same comment.
And
if we do, having said that, if we should I withdraw? I mean, if that's the consensus and there's 5 of us voting and it looks like 3 of us are not in favor, should I withdraw the motion so that we don't deny them, or how do we handle that?
Thank you. Ms. Bailey, that's a procedural question.
So the current motion on the table is to approve the project. If that motion fails, then someone could introduce a new motion.
And that new motion would be to basically to refer the project, correct?
What I am hearing from commissioners,
I'm coming in and out, so I am not hearing everything.
What I am hearing from commissioners is they would like to refer it to explore a solution that reads more like 2 street facades as opposed to a singular street facade. Is that correct?
That is what that's what I'm trying to get at, I guess. So yes, that is correct if you're asking me.
From what I heard, I think so, yes. I think Mr. Arneson has his hand up.
I think it was just still up from previous. I'll lower it.
I'm really losing it here. So, okay.
I would recommend we do a roll call vote for the current motion.
Okay. So let's do a roll call. Ms. Bailey.
Rich Arneson,
Aye.
Maurice Taylor,
Aye.
Dave McLean.
Aye.
This is to approve the project.
To approve the
Oh,
project.
nay, thank you. I thought you were talking about something else.
Sorry.
He already said aye.
Katie
Nay.
Kalczewski
Nay.
and Anna Andrzeje.
Nay.
Okay.
All right. So essentially the motion failed. So is there, this is where we would introduce a motion to refer if the commission so desires.
I'd make them go ahead.
I think it's you, David.
All right, make that motion to refer, please.
And I'll second.
Okay. So we have a new motion on the table to refer this item to a future meeting, which when is our next meeting, Ms. Bailey?
August 17th.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion of this? I would like to say, I hope we've given the applicant clear guidance on where we're at. I think the three of us who did not approve the earlier motion tried to be as clear as possible in terms of breaking up the massing. And there were some other suggestions related to that. Okay, so should we do a roll call on this as well, or should we assume unanimous consent to refer? Ms. Bailey, do you have a sense?
I would recommend assume unanimous unless someone raises their hand in opposition.
Okay. So I'm going to assume unanimous consent. Anyone opposed to it, please use the raise your hand function in Zoom if you oppose this. Okay, seeing none. So this item is, Mr. Taylor.
Okay, then we will do I suppose I could do a roll call vote, but I'm going to assume that everyone is voting yay except for Commissioner Taylor, and I will note him as being in opposition.
Okay. Sorry, I'm learning the system, so thank you. Thanks for your patience, guys. Okay. Anything else, Ms. Bailey, on this item?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda. This is item 3, Legistar 60774, a project at 1852 Summit Avenue involving the demolition of an existing garage structure and construction of a new garage structure in the University Heights Historic District. This is a public hearing item, so I want to go ahead and open the public hearing, but I also want to turn it over to Ms. Bailey for a brief staff report.
Okay, so up on the screen, we have a street view of the property in question. The proposal is to demolish an existing garage and replace with a similar larger garage. And here we have a site plan showing the approximate location. So for history of the property, the principal structure was constructed in 1922. It is in the French provincial style. The garage appears to be contemporaneous to the house, but I do not have any documentation that shows a date of construction for the garage. For applicable standards, we're talking about 2 different certificates of appropriateness, one for granting the demolition of the garage. And in the staff report, I talk about that Landworks Commission has approved similar proposals in terms of looking at the overall rehabilitation of a property for new and ongoing uses to accommodate a garage structure that will serve current cars. We're also looking at 41.24 University Heights Historic District Standards for Review of New Structures. And there's a little bit of sort of cross-reference. The applicable standard is looking at accessory structures, which then refers back to the standard for materials for a principal structure related to the type of cladding for the walls. Here we have some pictures of the existing building. You'll see that it is partly built into a hillside, and that hillside is impinging on one of the walls and causing a structural failure. There are some architectural references to the house, And in particular, you have the stucco, you have the roof form, but you also have that inset niche there in the gable end. For the proposed garage, what you had in the original submission showed some plans. Staff provided comments, well, both related to comments provided from building permitting and from me as the preservation planner. So they revised the proposal. They don't have new construction documents for review, but essentially they will replicate the inset niche. The building will be clad in stucco. The roof form that is currently on the building that goes over the garage, they're not doing that fully across. They're just doing the returns of the roof there on either side. They are proposing a garage door that will be similar to the existing. There is a style of window that is similar to the existing, although I do have a note down here for SDL. In putting together the PowerPoint, I was looking at the specifications for the window, and it wasn't clear to me if the proposed window had simulated divided lights or true divided lights, which is typically a requirement that the Landmarks Commission makes. So I have a question about the style of the muntins for the proposed window, but the pedestrian door is period appropriate. For the proposed roof shingles, they're looking at a high definition type, which is not something that we've tended to approve because it mimics wood shakes, which are chunky. And we didn't tend to have wood shakes on buildings in Madison. Wood shingles, yes, which were much more uniform and thinner. So this particular manufacturer makes a style of shingle that we approve, and also the State Historic Preservation Office approves. And so part of my standards of my conditions of approval was recommendation for that style. It's natural shadows. So staff believes the standards for granting a certificate of appropriateness are met and recommends Landmarks Commission approve the proposal with the following conditions: the GIF natural shadows architectural shingle or similar product for the roof cladding, and final building plans to be approved by staff. There's the possibility of an additional condition for if requiring either simulated or true divided lights on the windows.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Do we have registrations on this item?
So there is one registrant, Clark Landis, registered in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions representing the project.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant or the person representing the applicant? Okay, Ms. Kalashevsky.
This is for the applicant who's not speaking. I just want to make sure that the homeowners understand staff recommendations and are okay with them.
Okay, Mr. Landis, can you hear us?
Clark, you should be unmuted.
Mr. Landis, are you there? I hear something.
I'm here.
Great.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yes, we are aware of the staff recommendation.
And you're fine with those, including the question Ms. Bailey raised about the windows and divided lights. Ms. Bailey, did you want to repeat that?
Yes. So my question was about the grills that are proposed for the window.
Yep.
Are they simulated divided lights? Are they true? Probably not true divided lights. Or are they some other type of configuration? Are they snap in between the glass?
They're simulated divided lights.
Okay, Ms. Kalashevsky, does that satisfy your question?
Yeah, I think so. simulated divided lights, that's what we want. I'm sorry, I apologize. That's what Heather wanted in her staff report.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
We're good.
Then yes, I am.
We're good. Okay. All right. Any further questions of Mr. Landis? All right. Seeing none, there are no other registrants for this item, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Any questions for Ms. Bailey or any comments? And if not, I'll entertain a motion on item number 3. Okay, Commissioner McLean.
Propose approval with staff comments.
Okay, Mr. Arneson.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a item that has been moved and seconded. Anybody wish to? You can all unmute. Does anybody wish to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion that has been made and seconded with conditions outlined in the staff report and in discussion today. So I'm going to call the vote. I'm going to assume unanimous consent unless I see an objection. If you object, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, this motion passes. Okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Ms. Bailey, do we want to consider 4 and 5 together or separate?
I would recommend considering them separate because they are dealing with very different issues.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure on that. All right, so we're going to begin with item 4. This is Legistar 61118. This is the land combination of the parcels located at 157-1519 North Pinckney, 120 East Washington, 22 North Webster, in the 4th Aldermanic District. This is also a public hearing item, and I want to begin by opening the public hearing, and I will turn it over to Ms. Bailey.
So what we have before us is certificate of appropriateness for combining the lots that are listed here. For the proposal, it will the combination of lots for the American Exchange Bank development. With this proposal, though, the boundary of the landmark designation for 1 North Pinckney would remain the same. And that means that any future exterior alterations to the building at 1 North Pinckney would require a certificate of appropriateness from the Landmarks Commission. However, any of the new development on the remaining parcel would not be under the purview of the Landmark Commission. So here we have from the applicant's submission, the dark blue are the properties proposed for combination. There's also, that's outside of our purview, the areas of the development, the alley would be abandoned. Here we show the proposed development. You have the building outline, but also showing that the current landmark designation boundary for 1 North Pinckney would remain the same. Ethical standards, land divisions and combinations. This is put a little awkwardly. The standard requires that the commission approve unless the proposed lot sizes adversely impact the historic character or significance of a landmark. And the way they are addressing the landmark that would be on the parcel is by leaving that boundary for the landmark designation the same, thus preserving the existing landmark building, are incompatible with adjacent lot sizes. This is more of something that we tend to look at with historic districts, but I think this is also taking into consideration if we're proposing a new lot that would be an entire landmark. The way they're addressing this being compatible with the adjacent lot sizes is by maintaining what was the former lot for 1 North Pinckney, and I think that ends up making this compatible with the adjacent lot sizes. It is not changing the lot configuration for the existing landmarks, both the landmark that would be within this boundary and the adjacent. So with that, I was also pulling up again from City GIS, the lot configurations. There's a lot of different types of lot sizes and configurations in the downtown core, particularly all around the Capitol Square. There's a lot of stuff going on. But what it does is you end up seeing a lot of different configurations that provide the character of what is the heart of downtown. Staff believes that the standards for granting a certificate of appropriateness for the land combination are met and recommend the Landmarks Commission approve the land combination with the landmark designation boundary of 1 North Pinckney to remain unchanged.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. This is a confusing one, so I'm sure there will be questions for you going forward. We'll begin, though, by calling on folks who have registered for this item.
We first have Brad Binkowski, registered in support, wishing to speak.
Hey, Mr. Binkowski.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Since the Landmarks Commission has last seen the development of what we propose for what we call the American Exchange properties, we've worked really hard to try and address a number of issues that probably are best addressed in the certificate of appropriateness for the alterations adjacent. But let me just say that we fully understand that the American Exchange Bank is not the Burroughs block. The Burroughs block needed to be demolished because of its existing condition. You know, our plans for the American Exchange properties involve saving and preserving the American Exchange Bank building. We fully understand, excuse me, that the Landmarks Commission will continue to have purview over any exterior changes, and so we're fully aware of that. We spend a lot of energy lovingly trying to save the building and make it better, and we intend to continue to do that in the future.
Okay. Any commissioners have questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Binkowski, I'd stay close in case questions come up, but thank you. Okay, Ms. Bailey.
Next, we have Jose Granados, registered in opposition, wishing to speak. And with him per the email should also be Sarah Granados, and they sent a presentation. Let me pull that up.
Okay. Mr. Granados, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. She's pulling up the presentation. So just wait a moment. I just wanted to make sure we were connected. So hold on.
Of course.
Sorry.
Just taking a moment on the presentation.
Not a problem.
Okay.
I think we're good to go.
All right. So my name is Jose Granados. I'm here with my wife, Sarah Granados, and we both own part owners of Enovino Downtown. The reason we are objecting this project is for the bulk of it, the size of it. We believe that it will definitely change a view that has been created. That I know that the view is not a landmark, but for all our guests that have proposed there, get married there, so for all of our guests that have had an emotional item with our restaurant and with a view, for them it is in their heart it is a landmark view. We have partnered with multiple associations for the view. I mean, the Greater City of Madison does multiple videos there because of the view, and we truly believe that not just right now we are battling the COVID fight, trying to survive this fight with this pandemic, and then at the same time we get now confronted with this, and that's the reason why we are opposing on the building, on the height of the building, We believe that progress is progress, and progress will happen as life goes on. But I believe that there can be changes into the proposed building that would allow to for us or for everyone to see to keep this view, because we're public space. They're building an office building, and the office building is gonna get the top floor will be the executives, and those are the ones that are gonna get the view. In our building, everyone gets to come in and enjoy the view, whether you're coming from New York or from California or from any part of Wisconsin. You come and enjoy the view because we have a public space, not a private space. And I think that's what marks the difference. And that's why in our hearts, we want to protect this, because we believe that it is such a unique experience when you getting down in one knee and propose to your future wife. And if you can scroll to the pictures, you'll see some of the events that we have had there. Just keep scrolling. And so those are the views from the restaurant that would we be losing. And I think, as I said, it might not be a landmark view, but in these people's hearts, it is a landmark view that they're always going to remember their wedding, their special occasion, with that background of the Capitol, because we are a public space. And that's the reason why we're opposing this building.
Okay.
That would be all. And
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the commissioners for this registrant? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Granados. I believe that you may want to be mindful that this project is going through other bodies and commissions. Our jurisdiction today as landmarks is limited specifically to issues related to historic properties, historic landmarks. So I would encourage you to make sure you watch this project go through all of the different steps. Okay. Ms. Bailey, do you have something to say?
I was going to go to the next registrant.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Andrew Inman, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Inman. I'm the Vice President of Development with North Central Group. We are the owners of the AC Hotel, the space that Mr. Granados just highlighted some of the views. I do want to bring out, really tie some of the things that Mr. Granados pointed out back to the standards that Ms. Bailey identified for you tonight. Before I do that, I do want to bring up one other objection we do have, and that is that notice is required to be delivered not less than 10 days prior to the hearing date. North Central Group did not receive our notice until July 7th, so last week. And I think it's relevant, and I do think there are others who did not receive a timely notice as well. And it's relevant as we talk about some of the impacts on this project, needing sufficient time to analyze it, particularly the fact that the design changed since the last submittal that ULI made. Specific to the standards of the land combination, the standard Ms. Bailey identified is the applicant must not propose lot sizes that adversely impact the historic character or significance of a landmark, or that are incompatible with adjacent lot sizes or fail to maintain the general lot size patterns of the historic district. I think this proposal fails on all three counts. The overall lot size is much greater than the adjacent lot sizes within this block, as was shown in the staff presentation. In many cases, those lot sizes are much less than even 15,000 square feet versus the proposal to combine a single lot into 56,000 square feet. It's a size, almost a 2 football field. The overall lot size fails to maintain the general lot size and patterns of the surrounding lots. And just the massive scale of this project will adversely impact the historic character of the landmark sites. including not just the American Exchange building, the Center 7 building, but the state capitol, which actually this application fails to address in its entirety. It's 65 feet away. And I think the public views of that Mr. Granados identified are relevant to this application in that it does impede the public's ability to enjoy those landmark views. Our request today for this item, as well as the next, is either to defer action, refer it to a future meeting, or deny the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I provide a point of clarification related to adjacency? The city's definition of adjacency are properties that share a property line. I'm sorry, that was the public comment alarm. So the Capitol building is across the street, and so there is a public right-of-way, and that breaks the adjacency. This development would only be taking into consideration the landmark properties that are adjacent to the proposed development. And again, that goes with sharing a property line. Also, the third standard for the land combination is about a historic district, and it's not applicable to this project because it is not within one of our 5 historic districts.
Okay, thank you for those clarifications. Do any commissioners have questions of Mr. Inman at this time? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Inman. Ms. Bailey.
Next is Jeff Lenz, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Jeff Lenz, one of the owners representing the AC Hotel located at 1 North Webster, directly adjacent to this project. We began dialogue with the applicant regarding this application back in May, based on our concerns regarding the project after its initial submittal for this commission earlier this year. Our concerns and the primary reason for our opposition to this project revolve around 2 main issues: notice and impact of this project on public views to landmark sites, namely the Capitol building and Capitol grounds, which we do not believe has been addressed at all in the applicant's materials. With regard to notice, we did not receive notice regarding this submittal until July 7th, well short of the 10-day required notice provision. This project and the site itself is too significant to have even the slightest appearance of being rushed through the process without adjacent property owners having adequate notice to properly evaluate and comment. With regard to landmark views, public views of the Capitol and its grounds have been an integral component of the successful operation of not only the AC Hotel, but our restaurant tenant on floors 9 and 10, Vino downtown. The massive scale of the project, over 300,000 square feet above ground, will have a devastating impact and adversely impact the integrity of the public view of the landmark state capitol building and capitol grounds. In our discussions with the applicant, we had requested that they share basic design information so we could model the visual impact of the very large project on this public viewshed. To date, the applicant has been unwilling to do so. We have undertaken a third-party visual impact study to assess this impact. Since we did not receive adequate advance notice or the updated design until after it was posted on Legistar, we are not able to share the results of the updated design on this visual impact today. We would request that the Commission either deny both requests or at a minimum refer the project to a future meeting to address these concerns. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lenz. Do any commissioners have any questions of this registrant? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Ms. Bailey.
Kurt Steggy, registered in support, wishing to speak.
Good evening. I'll make this very brief because I had assumed incorrectly that 4 and 5 would be addressed at the same time. Simply note that the Massive Trust for Historic Preservation supports this matter. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Steggy? Mr. Taylor?
My question was actually for Mr. Lenz, if he is still around. It was the gentleman who spoke in opposition for AC Hotel.
Bet.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Sorry, I couldn't get it up fast enough. Sorry about that, Andrew.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Lenz, I just have one question for you. Is your group's opposition to this project only because it's blocking the view of your hotel from the 9th and 10th floor?
That's certainly a large component of it. As I shared, that view, which again we consider a public view, will obviously have significant impact to the majority of those spaces mentioned. There is also an economic component that we haven't really discussed yet, that I know is not the purvey of this body, but a number of those rooms that face North Webster will be impacted, and thus the economics and value of our property will be diminished.
The value will be diminished?
Correct.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Taylor?
It does. It does. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any further questions since I missed his hand, for Mr. Lenz while he's here from any commissioners? Okay, I see none. So Ms. Bailey, are there further registrants on this item?
Indeed. Joanna Rouse, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Can.
Okay, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Joanna Rouse, and along with my father, Fred Rouse, we own Capitol Edge Apartments, which sits next to the AC Hotel. And I've been kind of monitoring and watching this, and as well, I do have concerns with the project and just the massiveness of it. And we too have residents that get to enjoy the view of the Capitol, and we are concerned, that might upset our residents. We have 49 apartments there. And also, potentially affect our ability to rent those units. The other thing that comes to mind for me is we went through a long process for the Lamp House and the ad hoc committee that was established for this project and for the Lamp House. And my other concern is, has there been given any thought? I know it's not adjacent, but it is a pretty substantial landmark. And we had to work through many things, of which reducing our unit size for about 10 units. Had to put a view shed or kind of separate our building in order to provide a view to the Lamp House. And we were kind of curtailed in being able to, put any more stories on. And so I just want to make sure that there's consistency, I guess, in different proposals that are presented. And, I'm wondering about shadow studies, some of these things, and I'm not sure if that's addressed necessarily in landmarks, but we kind of went through that process as well. And so I guess my thought would be to defer. I like the people from North Central Group would like to see a bit more clarification on what this is going to look like and how this potentially could affect our residents and our building. And I too didn't get my notice until early last week, probably Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm thinking as well.
Okay, thank you very much. The commissioners have any questions of this registrant? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Rouse. Ms. Bailey.
The rest, we have 3 registrants not wishing to speak but available for questions. Mark Binkowski in support, from Madison. David Jennerhan, registered in support from Chicago. Tom Daly, registered in support from Chicago. After that, we have registrants not wishing to speak. Mark Geis, opposed. Annabelle, sorry, public comment alarm. Annabelle Brandt, opposed for Madison. Jacob Harris, support, Madison. Jose Garcia, opposed, Madison. Jose Franca, neither in support or opposition, Madison. Dana Thiel, opposed, Madison. Kyle Kubik, opposed, Madison. Keith Grender, opposed, Madison. Sarah Enos, opposed, Madison. Matt Siegler, opposed, Madison. Tyraine Todd, opposed, Monona. Lauren, no last name given, opposed, Madison. Sydney Schmidt, opposed, Madison. Sarah Granados, who we heard from previously, opposed, Verona. Harmon Fiedler, opposed, Madison. John Smythe, opposed, Madison. Leaf, Anthony, opposed, Windsor. Jessica Lynn, opposed, Fitchburg. Calvin Vincent, opposed, Fitchburg. Matt Thomas, opposed, Madison. Raw Fury, opposed, Madison. Kirsten Brandel, opposed, Madison. Taylor Nicole Smale, opposed, Madison. And registered twice. Miguel Granados, opposed, Verona. Pamela Proyoritz, apologize, opposed, Green Bay. Susan Schmale, different Schmale. Opposed, Rio. Jerry Prioritz, opposed, Green Bay. Jerome Prioritz, opposed, Green Bay. Jerry Crevice, opposed, De Pere. Morgan Donath, opposed, Madison. Craig Spalding, opposed, McFarland. Sarah Hassam, opposed, Madison. That's the registrant.
Okay, great. I'd like to ask commissioners if they have any questions for any of the registrants. Several of them are still up, including Mr. Lenz, who answered a question previously. So before we let them go, I just wanted to see if there were any questions. Please raise your hand if you have them. Mr. Taylor, you're free to go.
I want to ask Mr. Lenz, are any of the other registrants that he heard Ms. Bailey call are also stakeholders or shareholders in his AC hotel or any one of the restaurants?
There were a couple familiar names there involved with Enovino, but I can't speak to any that I'm familiar with on the hotel side.
Other than Mr. and Mrs. Granados, you mean, other than them two, there were also other shareholders or stakeholders in Enovino.
And Mr. Smith is also an owner in Enovino downtown and west side.
Were there other, I guess question number two would be, were there other stakeholders in that you heard that Ms. Bailey from staff went through? Were there other stakeholders in the AC hotel that you heard her call as well?
Other than Andy Inman, who spoke, none that I believe represent the AC hotel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the commission have any questions?
Chair, I will say that the applicant sent me an email asking if they could have a chance to respond to some of the comments.
Okay. Mr. Benkowski, are you there?
Can you hear me?
You requested a chance to respond.
I think the matter before us, right, and before the Landmarks Commission right now is really very succinctly addressed by Ms. Bailey. I know that the Landmarks Commissioners will be acutely aware of the step that was taken before we could even begin the public approval process, which is really the related to the delisting of and demolition of Center 7. That got widespread notice. I think 94 of the registrants that were heard were in favor of the project, and there were 2 opposed, and including the operators of the AC Hotel and of Vino. The existing zoning allows the full height that we are proposing to. We've moved the building back 18 feet from and really to preserve a full view of the Capitol from dome from Vino. There's certainly going to be plenty of opportunity for the Urban Design Commission and other bodies that will weigh in on the architectural merits. And so I would hope that the commission would find that in fact the combination of the lot with the work that we have put into maintaining the historic scale of Pinckney Street, of setting the building further back, the new building further back from the American Exchange building, are in fact that building underground parking, which you really couldn't do if you maintained lot sizes that were consistent with what exists. Certainly, even a 5-story building would block the views from the Rouse's apartment project of the Capitol Square, and the 55% of the current site that's vacant and used for surface parking is certainly something that's not in the interest of downtown to preserve and maintain. I'd say I think there'll be ample opportunity to hear the concerns expressed by some of the applicants who registered in opposition. I would venture that a number of them are either employees of the restaurant as they were last time, and I think it's something that we're certainly prepared to address before the Urban Design Commission.
Okay. Any commissioners have questions for Mr. Binkowski? Okay.
Yep.
Please stay on. Mr. Arneson.
Thanks. Brad, will you have neighborhood meetings where some of these concerns could be discussed and addressed in a more open forum?
Yes, absolutely. Great.
Thank you.
I thought I saw another hand. Ms. Kalshevsky, was that a mistake? Or did you want to say something?
I mostly have a question for Heather and not the registrant, so I don't know if this is the time to ask that question or not.
Okay, let's hold until we can let some of these people go. Are there any questions for? I'll keep your hand raised for now. Are there any further questions for any of the registrants on this item or the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And this would be a time, Katie, for questions for staff.
A number of the applicants mentioned that they did not get the proper amount of time to review the materials. Is that how do we deal with that on a commission level if they don't feel as though they have the required amount of time?
So what is within the city's control is the method that we go about issuing public notice. Our mailing went out on time, and the public posting within the newspaper went out on time.
So this is based on date of sending, not receiving. Is that correct?
Yes. Sorry, just a moment. I'm receiving additional legal clarification.
Okay. All right, we can hold on that.
The notice is sent 10 days in advance rather than received 10 days in advance.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. I would like to, not to drag things out. I want to move things along, as I said earlier, but I would like Ms. Bailey, if you could just remind us of the issues before us. This is specifically for number 4, which is item number 4, which is the land combination, and specifically what we're being asked to look at tonight. If you can just, in a minute, quickly rehash that again.
Sure, and let me share that slide again.
Thank you.
So we're looking at just the standards for land divisions and combinations, because the proposed parcel will include the remaining landmark. Landmarks Commission approved demolition of the other landmark that would have been a part of this proposal. So this is related to the landmark designation of 1 North Pink. With that, we're talking about the proposed lot size adversely impact the historic character or significance of a landmark. The way the applicant is proposing to address that standard is by retaining the proposed boundary for the historic designation for 1 North Pink. The proposed lot sizes adversely impact the historic character, are incompatible with adjacent lot sizes. As I was saying earlier, downtown has a lot of different lot sizes. This particular block has different lot sizes. A lot of them are a lot smaller than the proposed development. With this, though, what we're looking at is the adjacent landmark buildings. They are remaining they're retaining their existing proposed boundaries. Those are not changing. My recommendation is that it does meet that standard. This standard is really keeping in mind if you're proposing a landmark parcel, and this parcel will contain a landmark, but the landmark is a very small portion of that proposed parcel. And then the final category that I did not highlight was fail to maintain the general lot size pattern of a historic district. This is not within a historic district, and so that particular standard is not applicable to this situation.
Okay, thank you for that. I would also like to just add what Landmarks has seen before is largely related to the demolition of a landmark, which is not the same landmark that we're discussing tonight. So this project has proceeded in a different order, but nothing could happen until that decision. So this is our second pass in terms of seeing this project, but it is not, we're not voting on anything like a final approval. Ms. Bailey, can you speak? I mean, we have another item in a second related to this project, and we also will have further opportunity to weigh in on this project going forward. Is there anything you want to say relative to that?
Well, so the next part of this project that Landmarks Commission would be reviewing is the adjacency to a landmark advisory recommendation that would go to the Urban Design Commission and the Plan Commission. After that, unless there is something proposed that will physically alter 1 North Pinckney, Landmarks Commission will not have an involvement. It will be the purview of UDC and Plan Commission.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. Mr. McLean.
Yes, this is for Ms. Bailey, actually. All of the people that were registered in opposition or support of, was that for this item number 4 or item 4 and 5? Will we hear them again in 5? Have you any idea?
There's actually a different number of registrants for the 2 different agenda items.
Okay, good.
But they are 2 separate agenda items, and so it is their prerogative to register for each.
We'll make sure that all is clear, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, further questions for staff on this item? Okay, Mr. Taylor.
Just like to hear staff recommendations again, just once again, please.
And still sharing the screen, good. Staff believes that the standards for granting certificate of appropriateness for the land combination are met and recommend the Landmarks Commission approve the land combination with the landmark designation boundary of 1 North Pinckney to remain the same. That is what I think makes this proposal meet the requirements for this standard.
Okay, Mr. Taylor. Okay, great. Okay, so commissioners, we need to either make a motion or have further discussion of this item. And again, we are voting on item 4, which is, as the staff recommendation on the screen shows, the land combination. This is separate from what we will be talking about with item 5 here in a second. Mr. Arneson.
Move approval.
I'll second. And if I can add a friendly just to per staff recommendations. That's all. Just approval per staff recommendations.
Okay. That's considered friendly, Mr. Arneson. Okay, so there's a motion on the table to approve with the staff recommendation. Any further discussion? Anyone want to speak to, I don't know, standards or anything that Ms. Bailey has said?
I'll speak if I may. Go back to the standards, just for my memory, please. Apologies. Just a quickie, I was a little confused as to how it met the how it was not adversely impacting the historic characteristics of the landmark, and how it is not making it incompatible with the adjacent lot sizes. Until again, understanding it even more, so rereading it again, understanding that we're not talking about a landmark site that's being co-joined or not in historic districts, so that standard does make sense.
And also, with the way the buildings tend to develop in the downtown and on this particular block, we're talking about lot line developments by and large. So these are buildings that are already taking up their entire lot. They're separated by party walls, not by a separation between buildings. So this is a different situation. If this were in a residential neighborhood, it would be different because you would have the separate buildings on their parcels and, you know, the rhythm of buildings and masses and spaces. These are all buildings that are sharing a space, and there don't tend to be gaps in between them.
All makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote, and I think we can assume unanimous consent on this item. If there is an objection to approving the motion that's on the table, which is to approve with the staff recommendation, please signify by raising your hand, either physically or preferably in the Zoom chat, please. Okay, this item passes unanimously. Right, we need to move on to our next item, which is an advisory recommendation. This is item number 5, Legistar 6112. Let's see, sorry. I'm going to read my agenda here. 61120, the American Exchange Development adjacent to 3 designated Madison landmarks. And these would be 1 North Pinckney, 21 to 23 North Pinckney, and 117 to 119 East Mifflin Street in the 4th Aldermanic District. Ms. Bailey, I'll turn it over for a presentation, please.
Sure, just a moment. I'm editing the opening slide, which I had copied from the previous presentation and therefore does not make sense. Okay, so sharing a screen. Okay, so we're talking about the advisory recommendation for the proposal that is a proposed development that would be reviewed by the Urban Design Commission and or the Plan Commission. In this instance, it will be both for adjacent to a landmark. So this particular proposal would be directly adjacent. And again, we're talking about sharing a property line. There are other landmarks on this block. But would only be adjacent to 1 North Pinckney, 21 to 23 North Pinckney, and 117 East Mifflin. So this slide that comes from the applicant submission shows the footprint for the proposed development and then the landmarks that would be adjacent to the proposed development. I edited this particular slide in red there in the upper left-hand corner. I'm showing all of those buildings are designated landmarks, but the ones that I have bounded in green, those are the only ones that would have adjacency to the proposed development. So applicable standards, whether the proposed development is so large or visually intrusive as to adversely affect the historic character and integrity of the adjoining landmark or landmark site. So with this, we have looking down from above where there's essentially a podium for most of the proposed building, and then there is a tower element that is oriented in a way that is set back from the adjacent landmarks that are on the northern boundary of the proposed development. But then the way that the tower is set up, it intersects, it comes right up to the boundary of 1 North Pinckney along the rear corner. 1 North Pinckney is a very narrow building. Here I highlighted the adjacent landmarks that would be in relation to the proposed development. Here you have a view of 1 North Pinckney along East Wash, and so you can see the relation of the new development to the landmark in question. And then this is 117 East Mifflin, and so you can see a little bit of the tower behind it. And this is a different perspective to give you a feel of, essentially it's pretty far behind that adjacent landmark. Staff recommends that the Landmarks Commission provide their advisory recommendation to the Plan Commission that the proposed new structure is not so large or visually intrusive as to adversely affect the historic character or integrity of the adjacent landmarks at 1 North Pinckney, 21 to 23 North Pinckney, and 117 to 119 East Mifflin.
Okay. Thank you for that. I assume we have registrants on this item based on your previous comment.
Yeah. Okay, so first registrant is Brad Binkowski, registered in support, wishing to speak.
Okay, Brad.
Great, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. So Heather, if we could turn to the slide deck that you showed, the aerial view of the tower that we had originally proposed and how the proposal's been modified. I think the commission will see a couple of things. One is, we really have dramatically reduced the height of the upper floors of the building, to introduce what we think is a far stronger architectural concept. A curve that basically moves away from the south property line as it moves towards the AC Hotel and towards the Capitol Square. I think it's a far more elegant tower. I think it's far more appropriate, and it really does dramatically enhance and improve the views from Bino. In fact, you can see the entire Capitol Dome. We reached out to Mr. Lenz and Andy Inman in June, and again last week, and this is the first contact that we've had with them because they didn't choose to respond to us. We're certainly more than happy to engage with them and the neighborhood association. Our goal, Heather, if you could move to the view below the next slide in our proposal, our view to kind of set the building further away from the American Exchange facade is pretty dramatically demonstrated in this elevation. And again, as the commissioners I'm sure will remember, the 4-story building that is adjacent to Harvest, the outlined property with the dashed red line, was in fact, virtually the identical form and scale of a building that was developed on that site prior to it being demolished and reused. Heather, if we can go to the next slide again, it shows you the view from East Washington Avenue, where again the upper floors dramatically step back and create more light and air. We think it's a significantly improved design. It's not done yet. We're going to continue to work on it, and obviously the Urban Design Commission is going to have a significant amount of impact on it. So we're excited by the progress. The city staff in reviewing these latest modifications to the design, felt that it was a significant improvement and really did reflect something that respected the historic landmark status of the bank building and of the historic facades or scale of the facades along Pinckney Street. So we're very excited. On the last, Heather, if we can go to the last, I think they're the last 2 or 3 slides in the deck. Looking at the view from Mifflin Street, you can see just how far back the building is set. We've intentionally, tried to create a scale and light and air that would preserve the character of those landmark buildings. So we're very excited with the progress that we've made. We think we've responded to the standards that the Landmarks Commission has to evaluate alterations directly adjacent. And we're excited to allow this project to go through the full public approval process. And again, there'll be lots of meetings, there'll be lots of discussion, and I think everybody will have more than a fair opportunity to be heard. We think that ultimately this project, again, is what the future of downtown needs. If we don't have the character of space that's going to continue to attract the technology market, we will get through this COVID virus. If we don't have the investment in downtown that could attract, potentially up to 2,000 new employees to the downtown that'll contribute to add life and vitality and create business for restaurants. When we started developing on the Capitol Square and started developing density, we didn't have restaurants in downtown Madison. We didn't have people coming to work other than at US Bank Plaza and at government office buildings. And so that vitality, that energy, that investment, that activity is exactly what downtown Madison needs. What we're proposing is absolutely consistent with the downtown master plan. So we appreciate the Landmarks Commission careful consideration of this, and would respectfully request your support for the approval of the alterations directly adjacent to the landmark properties.
Thank you, Mr. Binkowski, and thank you specifically for speaking to items relevant to this commission in terms of the kinds of things we look at in terms of space and breathability. That's quite helpful for us. Are there any questions for the applicant from members of the commission? It's a good time to ask them so we don't have to bring them back. Okay, seeing none. Thank you. We'll let you know if we have further questions.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah.
Katie, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the time to do this, but there's something on the submittal from the registrant that I have an issue with, and I'd like for him to comment because I feel as though it's not true. But on page 14 of what you submitted to us, you say the City of Landmarks Commission recently granted approval of ULI's variance request to allow for the demolition of the locally landmarked Center 7 building in order to preserve the historic second floor windows in a reconstructed facade that more closely recalls the original structure. That is not what we voted on. We voted to just say that it's no longer a landmark. I feel as though this misrepresents kind of what our vote was.
Can I speak?
Yes, please do.
I think we spent a lot of time representing that we were going to preserve the meaningful architectural details on the second story of a portion of Center 7. And in fact, the Madison Trust weighed in on the reconstruction of that. We had multiple conversations with members of the trust, and so I thought it was a pretty integral part of our proposal. Again, I don't think there's an intent to misrepresent any action taken by the Landmarks Commission. The action that you took was to approve the demolition of Center 7, but with our representation that we were going to save everything that could be saved. There were a number of commissioners that commented extensively on that. We committed to do it. We committed to hire a preservation architect. We committed to reconstruct the facade in as careful a way as we can to reconstruct what exists originally, moving it slightly down the street. So I'm sorry if the text or the narrative in any way misrepresented what was discussed and what we committed to at the meeting. I believe we did commit to exactly what that says. So again, there's no intent to mislead. It's an intent to confirm what we discussed and agreed to.
Yeah, and I'd like to comment back on that, in that there were multiple other commissioners that asked that you don't do that because it's actually not current preservation standard. And we actually said in that meeting that we would discuss the inclusion of the facade in this meeting. I think you could say that the Madison Trust would like that, but again, there were a number of commissioners that said they wouldn't like that included in the current plans. And we did not vote the vote did not come down to saving those saving that collection of windows so that it could be so that we could say that it's no longer a landmark. I think that if you would like to change your language to say that that's why the Madison Trust supported it, that's great. That is, if you go back to the meeting minute and the actual recording, that is not what this commission said. And that's not how we voted.
Can I respond? I believe the official approval says that we would carefully explore deconstruction for potential reincorporation into the development.
Yes, and that is what we're doing in this meeting right now.
Ms. Bailey is not
I thought we were talking about alteration adjacent to landmark buildings, not the reconstruction of the Center 7 facade.
If I could provide a point of clarification, at the last Landmarks Commission meeting, the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition included as one of the conditions, explore careful deconstruction of the facade at 7 North Pinckney for potential reincorporation into the new construction.
So
the form of that was not finalized.
The approval was not predicated on that either. I mean, I guess it was in the sense that we wanted you to look at that, but we were not stipulating that it had to be included, I think is the clarification. So as long as we understand Mr. Binkowski sort of, what we approved, and we assume you're exploring it, but we didn't require that it must be done. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Ms. Kalashevsky, are you satisfied on that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant before we move on? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Bailey.
Jose Granados, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Mr. Granados?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Now that I'm a little bit less nervous, first I would like to thank you all in the committee that are present. I know we're dragging this longer than we would like to, but I really want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to express our feeling. Full disclosure, a lot of the people that register in opposition are employees of Enovino, not all of them, but I would say about half. And the reason they register in opposition is because with the risk of them losing their job. And I think that's a personal preference. It doesn't have anything to do with me telling them to register or not register. I think it has to do with them being worried about what's going to happen to their job if the restaurant is less busy, as they see it right now with the pandemic currently. And in regards of the applicant on the UDC meeting, I clearly specified that I would love to sit down with him and talk over things, and he never reached out. So I don't see equal saying here to reach out to let's work on something together versus just popping things up like that. Secondly and lastly, we I wrote a letter, but since my wife is a better reader than I am, she's going to read it really quick, and then we'll be all done. And we just ask that you reconsider the approval of this project.
So basically, hi, this is Sarah Granados speaking. We primarily just want to reiterate in terms of this project as a whole that we are a public restaurant open to anyone and everyone to enjoy, locals or those that are visiting the Madison area. The Capitol building is the most iconic landmark in Madison, and we serve as a space for all to experience this incredible and unique view. We believe that this view of the Capitol provides a more unique, high priority benefit to the general public than a private use office building. We've been proud to be a venue for countless special occasions for many visitors from the Madison area, across the country, and even across the world. Birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, engagements, weddings, and many other life events are celebrated with us regularly with the illuminated view of the Capitol building, almost so close you can touch it, making all these life events feel extra special for everyone that celebrates with us. As a fairly new building ourselves, we understand and support development in Madison, but not at the cost of existing and developing landmarks. If the proposed project proceeds as currently designed, this unique view of the Capitol building available for the public to enjoy will be lost. Madison area residents and visitors alike will no longer have an opportunity to see the Capitol from this view, and they will instead be offered a peek at the dome and a view of large glass private use office building instead. As this project would adversely affect the integrity our view provides to the public, we would also respectfully request that this motion is deferred or denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone on the commission have questions for Mr. or Mrs. Granados? Okay, seeing none. Thank you both very much. Ms. Bailey?
Jeff Lenz, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Mr. Lenz?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll just be real quick. I really would just restate the two concerns I noted in agenda item number 4 relative to notice and impact of the project on public views. I would also add, relative to comments on some of the adjustments to the plan, again, given the size, scope, and scale of this project, I think it's certainly up for debate whether roughly 200 or 20 feet of setback across 200 to 260 feet is significant. But I'll just again reiterate our request of a denial of this proposal, or at minimum a referral to a future meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, getting late. Any commissioners have questions for Mr. Lenz on this project? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Stay handy in case we do have questions. Ms. Bailey?
Kurt Stiggy, registered in support, wishing to speak.
Great to be here again. I'll try to be a little bit, this is going to take a little longer, but not much. First of all, thank you, commissioners, for your public service. As reflected in the written submission, the Madison Trust for Historic Preservation does support both items 4 and 5. I'm making 2 comments, also set out in the written submission that we made. One is to express appreciation to the developer for positive modifications in the design, which we've found to be significant. Secondly, in the submission, there's a reference to the Burroughs block, and I think most of us are aware that that is part of Block 89, corner of Pinckney and Doty Street, originally built with Madison sandstone, just as the American Exchange Bank is built. And because when that structure, when Block 89 was built, and the sandstone there were issues in the strength of the sandstone, as is likely the case again. My understanding is that the reconstruction of that structure was with as comparable a stone as possible. Nevertheless, there was a difference in terms of what the building ended up being versus how it started. And so I simply, or the trust simply wants to request that the Landmarks Commission be particularly vigilant in terms of how the construction affects the American Exchange Bank. And I'll note that in a completely separate matter, for a separate reason, I called Insight Consulting today and spoke with Steve Morpole and learned that that firm has been retained to offer their expertise on the American Exchange Bank exterior stonework. And I had a very pleasant conversation with him. He seems extremely well qualified and knowledgeable, and I appreciated his comments about the intent in terms of the work on the American Exchange Bank. So we're dealing with Madison sandstone. It's a tough thing to work with. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have questions for Mr. Steggy? I don't know if Mr. Binkowski has a response to that in terms of the sandstone.
Would you like me to unmute him?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we're fully aware of the Burroughs block had to be demolished because the structural walls in between 20-foot bays were unsound and the stone was significantly deteriorated. We've restored to the degree that we can the bank building. We understand that we're going to save it. We have hired Steve Marpole and his firm to consult with us on how best to do that. He's had extensive experience with the Gates of Heaven Synagogue and stone treatments that can slow down the deterioration. It's our commitment that we will leave that building intact and do everything we can to restore this and replicate the sandstone. And certainly we'll bring any modifications before the Landmarks Commission for their approval, as we're required to do, given the continuing landmark status of that.
Great. Thank you very much. Any further questions for Mr. Steggy from the Commission? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Ms. Bailey.
Joanna Rouse, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Oh. Hi, thanks again. I have nothing to add at this time based on, I would say, just my previous comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Rouse? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Ms. Bailey.
Andrew Inman, registered in opposition, wishing to speak.
Okay, Mr. Inman.
Thank you. I'll keep my comments specific to the section 28.144 standards. I do think some of the confusion maybe and challenge for the commission is the way that ULI has approached the approval process through landmarks, kind of piecemealing different components of it. And really, I think rather than looking at things holistically, one of our concerns, and I think they're more appropriate to this standard, is I do believe some of the proposed modifications do impact the American Exchange building, which would be subject to an alteration or new construction. But the way they've kind of pieced things around, what they've done is carved out the site for American Exchange and really enveloped it with the above grade while still building underneath what it looks like a below grade parking structure. But what I'll do specifically, what I'll speak specifically to the development adjacent to this landmark site, and ultimately the massive scale of the project is over 300,000 square feet above ground, plus perhaps the additional 100,000 square feet below grade. And that really is surrounding above and around a 2,700 square foot American Exchange building. And ultimately, the scale of this project was, by any measure, is going to be deemed visually obtrusive and adversely affect the integrity of very public views of all of the landmark buildings that have been identified here. So we'll renew our request of the commission either to provide more time, refer this to a subsequent meeting so that we can study some of those views. I won't respond directly to some of Mr. Minkowski's suggestions that we haven't responded. We requested design information back on May 14th so we could model the visual impact, and there's been multiple exchanges since then, and everyone has been, that ULI is reluctant to share that information so we can do our own modeling and provide this commission with more appropriate visual representations of the impact. So we would request that this is either deferred, referred to a subsequent meeting so that we do have an opportunity to share that information with you, or rejected tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Inman. Are there any questions or, questions, I guess, for this registrant from the commission? Okay, seeing none. Oh, wait, I do see one. Mr. McLean.
So, question about the request to refer or deny tonight. The issues raised, are those pertinent to us tonight specifically? This might be more for Ms. Bailey and the, Mr. Inman. Are those issues being raised tonight more in our peer review for what we're looking at this evening, or is it something that some of these issues might be, if not all of them, more appropriate in other commissions down through the process?
I certainly think both, but specific to your standard tonight, you're required to make a determination of whether the proposed development is so large or visually obtrusive to adversely affect the historic character and integrity of the adjoining landmark or landmark sites. So that's specifically what I'm talking about, is just the 300,000 square foot scale above ground. That's almost twice as big as ULI's last project, 25 West Main. And it wraps around the American Exchange building, and it will cut off views specifically to the American Exchange building in addition to the other landmark buildings. So I think it's very relevant to this standard, more so probably than the combination of lots.
I guess follow-up question for Ms. Bailey, or maybe it's more of a clarification. Tonight, we are only doing an advisory recommendation on this project, correct? We are not voting on any certificates of any sorts, correct?
For this particular agenda item, it is strictly an advisory recommendation.
This will be coming back to us again after we go through it tonight?
No. Unless they are proposing some type of work on the property at 1 North Pinckney, Landmarks Commission's role will be done.
Okay, so just advisory, no certificate.
Well, there was the certificate of appropriateness for the land combination.
Yeah, which we've already
But otherwise, yes, this is about advisory for adjacent to the 3 landmarks named.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Inman? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Ms. Bailey?
The following registrants do not wish to speak but are available for questions. Mark Binkowski, registered in support from Madison. David Jennerhan, registered in support from Chicago. Tom Daly, registered in support from Chicago.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. I think it's important.
The next list is not wishing to speak.
Okay.
So not wishing to speak, Mark Geis, opposed, Madison. Annabelle Brandt, opposed, Madison. Jacob Harris, support, Madison. Jose Garcia, opposed, Madison. Dana Thiel, opposed, Madison. Kyle Kubicek, opposed, Madison. Keith Grender, opposed, Madison. Oh, Keith Grender again. Matt Siegler, opposed, Madison. Tyrone Todd, opposed, Monona. Jackie Tu, opposed, Madison. Lauren, no last name given, opposed, Madison. Sydney Schmidt, opposed, Madison. John Smith, opposed, Madison. Leaf Anthony, opposed, Windsor. Jessica Lynn, opposed, Fitchburg. Alvin Vincent, opposed, Fitchburg. Sarah Granados, who we heard from previously, opposed, Verona. Matt Thomas, opposed, Verona. Raw Fury, opposed, Madison. Kirsten Brandel, opposed, Madison. Taylor Nicole Smale, opposed, Madison. Miguel Granados, opposed, Verona. Pamela Priowarts, opposed, Green Bay. Susan Schmale, opposed, Rio. Jerry Cryorts, opposed, Green Bay. Jerome Cryorts, opposed, Green Bay. Jerry Crevice, opposed, De Pere. Morgan Donath, opposed, Madison. Sarah Hassam, opposed, Madison.
Okay. Thank you very much. What I was going to say before I jumped on you, got an early start, was that I appreciate the clarification regarding our jurisdiction that Mr. McLean raised. And we are talking specifically about an advisory recommendation to the Plan Commission, correct? Or do we advise urban design as well?
This would be an advisory recommendation that both UDC and Plan Commission would pull from.
That's important. And our jurisdiction, as you presented in your staff report, Ms. Bailey, has to do with criteria that we consider all the time relative to what is visually intrusive on a specific landmark, in this case, number 1 North Pinckney, as well as the other properties, 117. I can't remember all the numbers in 21, 23. I don't have it in front of me. So the 3 landmarks. So 4 landmarks, I guess, technically. So I would just wanted to repeat that for the commission so that we're all on the same page. We are looking at more than just the American Exchange. We do have the properties at 21 and 23 North Pinckney and 11719 East Mifflin. So we are looking at visual intrusiveness on all of those properties. So that is our jurisdiction. Views from properties toward those landmarks is not necessarily something we consider directly. We are looking at the nature of the new development and its potential visual intrusion on adjacent landmarks. Right? Ms. Bailey, correct me if I said anything wrong.
You were correct.
Okay. So with that, I will open the floor for commission members to make a motion or probably comment about their feelings on the proposed project. So I'll open the floor. You can unmute yourselves. That might make things easier. I'd still like you to raise your hands so I can have some semblance of order here, but Zoom silence. Okay. Anyone want to speak to the staff report or in general on our standards? I think that would be particularly helpful for our audience tonight, what we talk about when we talk about visually intrusive.
Heather, could you put the standards up on the?
Okay, should be shared.
Thank you, Heather. I think that helps. Okay. So the language is highlighted, whether the proposed development is so large and visually as intrusive as to affect the historic character of the adjoining landmark or landmark site. And again, it's more than the One North Pinckney, although that is one of them. Okay, if there's no comment, I will entertain a motion and we can discuss from there.
Andrew, I'd like to see staff recommendation again, please. Heather, if you could put that back up again.
So the chair did point out correctly that what I have in here is an advisory recommendation to the Plan Commission, but it should be to both the Urban Design Commission and the Plan Commission.
And the recommendation, just to for those following along by phone, is that the proposed new structure is not so large and or visually intrusive so as to adversely affect the historic character or integrity of the adjacent landmark already named. Mr. Arneson.
Yeah, I would move approval per staff recommendations. I think the developer's done a good job, especially with the reconfigured tower in stepping it back on multiple sides. And I think looking at the perspectives that were provided, it's my opinion that standards have been met.
Okay, there's a motion. Do I have a second? There's a motion on the table. Do I have a second to that motion? Well, this is one of those awkward Robert's Rules moments where I don't quite know what to do.
Andrew, I'll second the staff's motion. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Having a hard time. Operator error here.
That's all right. It's the Zoom world that we live in. So we have a motion that has been made and seconded to accept the staff recommendation. I would like both the maker and seconder of the motion to speak a little bit more. Mr. Arneson spoke, but if you have anything to add, Mr. Taylor or Mr. Arneson, about your decision on this project, I would welcome that, and then we'll hear from other commissioners.
If Rich ain't go, I can go.
Thank you.
Just looking at the overall mapping, and I know we weren't looking at, again, the item from 4 was just straight 5 here. Looks like the developer has gone back and did their best to make the intrusion as, I wouldn't say as little as possible, but to keep the character of the landmarks in place. So, and they have a staff recommendation here that says that they've done that. So I tend to agree with them.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
If I may.
Yes, please.
I mean, personally, I think the building is pretty big, and the Pinckney elevation is very large. I think that glass wall is overwhelming from the Capitol's perspective, or from the square looking back at Pinckney. But those are my opinions. To our standard, though, they've actually done a pretty nice job of keeping them away from the landmarks. So, yeah, I'll give them credit for that. And I was curious, if I may, also, this is again for Ms. Bailey, other than advisory recommendations, I apologize for losing my vocabulary on this, but we do have people that come in front of us sometimes, so just looking for general recommendations before they come back to us for a final yay or nay. What are those generally called?
Sure. So people can come before us for a preliminary read. And of course, now I'm blanking too. Yeah, we've been at this for 2.5 hours. To get the advice from the Landmarks Commission before they come in to request their certificate of appropriateness. This is not one of those projects. We have had other project comes to us for the advisory recommendation when a proposal is both adjacent to a landmark and is either going to go before the Urban Design Commission and or the Plan Commission.
Thank you. Yeah, but no. I guess the only discomfort I have is a little bit again with the Pinckney side. They are kind of close. Looks like they're overlapping the Exchange building a little bit. It'd be nice if they could clear that building entirely, just let it stand in its own footprint by itself. It might be a matter of inches. It might be the perspective past the cornice. I'm not sure, but they keep that ideal.
Dave, I was looking at that too. I don't think there is any overlap. If you look at the plan view, I think it's just because that building is so narrow. When you look at the plan view,
it's trying to.
What's that?
It intersects with the landmark building at the bottom corner, but it does not cross. It will be outside. The tower will be outside of the landmark designation boundary.
Perfect. Thank you both.
I will also say, in terms of staff feedback for the various iterations of this design, one of the things that we were saying was in terms of stepping back from the adjacent landmarks, and that's always our recommendation of trying to, the new development, to try to step it back in a way where it isn't, again, being so overly large and visually intrusive. So with that, things are stepped back from the primary facade of these buildings. One North Pinckney is a corner property, and so while what you're seeing there along East Wash is not the primary elevation, the way the tower is shaped, it is, of course, set back from the Pinckney side, but it is also done in a way where it comes in close to 1 North Pinckney and comes in the closest there to the sort of bottom corner, but it is not crossing into that boundary.
I am seeing the back radius in the corner of Webster and East Wash is what I'm seeing, the back radius of the tower. It looks like it crosses over. Yep, I get it. I'm with you. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we have a motion on the table that has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this item from any member of the body? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the vote on this advisory recommendation. I want to thank everyone, including all of the registrants, for their discussion today. All right, so Ms. Bailey, should we roll call or should we assume unanimous?
I would suggest assume unanimous unless people raise their hand to object.
Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. I'm going to, per Ms. Bailey's suggestion, assume unanimous consent. If there are any objections, please signify by raising your hand in the Zoom box, please. Okay, seeing none, this motion passes, this advisory recommendation, and this will continue to make its way through the channels. Moving on, this advisory recommendation will be taken up by the UDC as well as the Plan Commission, where I'm sure there will be a lot more discussion. Okay. All right, moving on our agenda. Reminder, we've consent agended the next 2 items. I just turned that into a verb, 6 and 7. So we're moving on to new business, correct? Just item 8.
So what we have is the Landmarks Commission annual report, which is coming a bit later in the year than it tends to. There tended to be lots of things going on. So let me share up on the screen. Annual report. So mostly this has the standard fare that you see in our annual reports every year. We have some standard headings, but of note, it's that last year I was hired, but also that Stu had served his maximum term and cycled off. We also have 2 new commissioners, Maurice Taylor and Betty Banks. Landmarks Commission met 19 times. In 2019, 20 meetings were scheduled and 2 meetings were canceled. 1 canceled meeting was rescheduled. We did update our policy document, our policy manual that governs our policy and procedures. For data, and this is part of why this report was coming in a little bit later, we were compiling together the data. So the number of Madison City parcels you have there of a little over 80,000, and the number of historic parcels, which is 2,026. There are 182 designated landmarks, 53 are located in historic districts, and 5 local historic districts, which have 1,897 parcels. For Landmarks Commission activity, Landmarks Commission approved 51 certificates of appropriateness. And there's a little bit of history of the process of the Landmarks Commission over the course of the year. The Preservation Planner also administratively approved 137 certificates of appropriateness in 2019. And we created a chart because we like charts. So this is breaking apart the various types of approvals that we had over the course of the year, showing where reinvestment activity is happening in our historic districts and with our landmarks, and then also separating out for the landmarks, the ones that are in historic districts versus the ones who are sort of off on their own. Also talking through the demolitions and combinations. I think I skipped over. We only had one denial over the course of the year. One of the things I like to tell applicants is that the Landmarks Commission wants to work with applicants to try to get towards an approvable project. And with that, there was only one project where Landmarks Commission said no, and that was for removing and wrapping of all wood trim on Holy Redeemer, which is a landmark property. So historic value reviews, those are the demolition reviews. We did 79 of those adjacent to the landmark reviews. We did 3 of those. Advisory recommendation to the Plan Commission was 3 related there, and to UDC, 3. Other reviews and recommendations that we had with this, there was the demolition by neglect case, and there was also a couple of Section 106 projects that came through that rather than just staff providing comment, I asked the Landmarks Commission to weigh in on. And Mifflandia, amendment to section of the Madison General Ordinances related to certificates of appropriateness in Forest Hill Cemetery. There were no designations or rescissions. Landmarks Commission did review 2 proposed National Register nominations and provide those comments to the State Preservation Review Board. Other big things that happened over the course of the year, there was the Historic Preservation Plan. There was lots of review of that, and of course that got adopted this year. Landmarks Ordinance Review Committee met 13 times in the course of 2019. That initiative is, you say, currently on hold. We did not apply for any certified local government subgrants last year. Traditionally, we have sent out a spring letter. This past year, we did not. And this year, we did not send out a spring letter either. Actually, for this year, I think we're going to look at either a late summer or fall so that people have the non-construction season to think through what they would like to do with their properties. There's also some general information about work of the preservation planner, aside from the other things listed about activities that I was involved in. So that is the report. You have not had a great deal of time to review it. Traditionally, with the annual report, there is a motion to adopt the report. If you think that you would rather have more time with the report and deal with this next time, we can do that.
Ms. Bailey, is it adopt or accept?
I'm sorry, it's accept.
Okay. Just that the adopt applies.
It's a different legal thing. Yep.
Okay. I'll take the temperature of the body on this. Do commissioners want more time to review, or are you okay with accepting the summary, the year in review as presented by staff? Ms. Kalashevsky? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand up.
Well, I'll say I'm okay with accepting it.
Okay, so I will take that as a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion of this? I want to commend staff for putting this together. I think there's some interesting statistics here. We may not talk about them at this juncture, but I was a little bit surprised at the approval rate. But I do think, as you said, it speaks to our willingness to work with applicants as we do and really carry out our charge. So I think that was interesting and useful. Any other comments? Okay, so there's a motion on the table to accept the report. I will assume unanimous consent on this item unless I see an objection raised by raising your hand in the side box. Seeing none, the report is accepted, and thanks to staff again for that. Okay, moving on, the secretary's report regarding future meeting schedules.
So the next Landmarks Commission meeting that we got approved for is August 17th. And so you undoubtedly received an email from Lauren notifying you of that. We have been hearing feedback from some commissioners that our meetings are running very long. They are. And part of that is that we're only meeting every 4 to 6 weeks, but that was the guidance that we had received from the city attorney's office when we were first coming into our pandemic response. For other bodies, they are also finding that their meetings are going very long and looking at the possibility of returning back to their regular schedule with the idea that you would be meeting more frequently, but you would be having shorter meetings. We can make that request to the mayor's office and to the council president. That does not mean we will get approval for that request. But before I make that request or the chair makes that request, we wanted to ask the rest of the body what you would like to do. Are you content with continuing to proceed with meeting every 4 to 6 weeks, knowing that our meetings will be longer? Would you like to ask that we go back to our meeting, approximately every 2 weeks, where we would be meeting more frequently, but the meetings would likely be shorter?
And I would just like to say that there's not a whole lot we can do with the technology. It takes twice as long to get, registrants on and that kind of thing. It's just going to be longer. So with that in mind, Mr. Arneson.
Yeah, I would be in favor of additional meetings, or at least making the request.
Any other feedback on this?
Same.
I think I agree also.
I sense some equivocation. Mr. Taylor,
I'll go with the body as well.
Okay. And I agree also. So I think, Ms. Bailey, the temperature is please request, and we'll go from there. But our next meeting will not be before August 17th.
No. Okay. The meeting for the end of July is officially canceled. Our next meeting, the earliest meeting we will have is August 17th.
And I asked Ms. Bailey last week as well. It appears we are in virtual mode until we hear otherwise. So, just prepare for August 17th, likely to be at least this long, if not longer. So, okay. Great, thank you. Moving on, buildings proposed for demolition.
Andrew, I'd like to ask one question.
Sure, go ahead.
We wanted to ask Heather if it's possible to, when we get the documents, if she could send out the staff recommendations so we can take a look at those as well. Or maybe she's doing it and I just didn't get them this last time. I don't know if they're prepared at that time. I know they're usually on the television when we're in the physical space, but is that possible, Heather?
So the staff report, the final section of each staff report has the staff recommendation.
Maybe I'm not seeing that. Okay, thank you.
Please feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk later, and I'll walk you through the structure, because it is
confusing.
There's a lot in these agenda packets.
Well, it could be operator error, because again, I'm looking at this on a tablet, so I just could be operator error. I just want to double check. Thank you.
And Mr. Taylor, I'm also happy to go over it as well. So,
okay.
Cool. All right. Demos.
Okay. This is going to be short. So first is to let you know that a property that is on the agenda for Plan Commission tonight. With us meeting only every 4 to 6 weeks, there's sometimes snafus with scheduling that we previously were able to navigate a bit better. But this property, rather than hold up its review through Plan Commission, they didn't submit through the demolition listserv in a timely manner. But this was a commercial building that was constructed in 1995. There's no preservation file on it, so staff prepared a memo providing a recommendation to Plan Commission of a finding of no historic value, which is something that I am empowered to do per the ordinance. So letting you know about that. For the other properties that are proposed for demolition that we're currently reviewing, staff recommendation for all of these is a finding of no historic value. There are not preservation files or files with the State Historic Preservation Office for any of these particular properties. For 404 North Few, it's a little unclear. The house was constructed in 1947. There's no date for the garage. It's a little unclear from the demolition submittal if they're just proposing demolition of the garage or if they're proposing demolition of the residential structure. I think it's just for the garage, but even if it were for the residential structure, that structure is fairly nondescript and it has had a great deal of evolution over time. I'm still thinking that there is no known historic value associated with this particular property. For 209 Cottage Grove, constructed in 1959, lots of alterations, heavily remodeled in 2008. 109 Cottage Grove, so the commercial building was constructed in 1935, and if you look at the staff report, so it says remodeled 1958. That storefront is entirely filled in. The cornice is removed. The building is covered in stucco. Underneath there is an older building, but architecturally that significance, I would say, has been very compromised. And again, there's no preservation file, so I don't have any information about it. 3900 Monona Drive, commercial building constructed 1969, that does not appear to have any known historic.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. I think we can do these unless anybody wants to separate as a group, and I'll entertain a motion on that.
I'll move to signify them as A, I think is the correct category.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
For all of them.
Katie?
I'm going to second.
Okay. We have a motion that has been moved and seconded. Any discussion or wish for separation on any of these items? Seeing none, I'm going to assume unanimous consent that none of these properties proposed for demolition has historic value. No known historic value. Any objections to that? Okay, seeing none. I think we've come to the end of our meeting. Ms. Bailey, anything else that I missed?
Nope, not that I'm aware of.
All right, I want to thank the commissioners again. This was another long haul, perhaps a little bit longer than any of us expected tonight. And I want to thank you for serving and thank you for your patience as we navigate this during this pandemic. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.